The sun burned overhead, hotter than anyone in the village could remember. Rivers dried up, crops withered, and animals dropped dead in the fields. The village of Udi had been suffering from drought for months. The people were desperate, their spirits as parched as the cracked earth beneath their feet. Ugo, the strongest man in the village, had seen the suffering in every home. Children cried, their lips cracked and dry. Mothers struggled to find water, even for a single sip, and the elders, once full of wisdom and pride, now sat in the shade, helpless and weak. Ugo knew that they had tried everything. They had prayed to the gods, made offerings, and even traveled far to seek help from other villages. But nothing had worked. Things hadn't always been this way in Udi. Once, the land was a lush paradise. The rivers flowed with fresh, clear water, and the earth was fertile. Every season brought abundant crops, and the villagers lived in harmony with nature. The elders often spoke of the land as a sacred gift from the gods, insisting that it needed to be treated with respect. For generations, the villagers shared their harvest, always careful not to take more than they needed. Rituals of gratitude were woven into the fabric of their lives, ensuring a delicate balance between their needs and what the earth could provide. But that balance had been broken. As the years passed, a new generation grew impatient. They began to see the land not as a partner to nurture, but as a resource to exploit. Some villagers, lured by the prospect of wealth, expanded their farms by cutting down vast areas of the surrounding forest. They harvested more crops than their families required, hoarding excess to sell in distant markets rather than sharing with neighbors. The wealthier families erected walls around their homes, stockpiling grain and water, turning once shared resources into coveted commodities. As greed seeped into their hearts, the old ways faded away. The rivers that had once quenched the thirst of all became a luxury for the privileged few. Worse still, some villagers dammed the river, diverting its life-giving flow to their own farms, leaving less for the rest. The skies grew dark and angry as the years dragged on. The rain that had once blessed the land in life-giving showers dwindled to a trickle. The earth, exhausted and overworked, ceased to yield the bounty it once had. The river, now stretched thin, began to dry. Yet even as their situation worsened, the villagers clung to their greed, taking more while giving nothing back. Now the earth was barren, the riverbeds cracked and dry. Udi was a ghost of the village it had once been, and the people faced starvation. They dug deep into the earth for water, but even the wells ran dry. Their greed had pushed the land and water too far, and nature had nothing left to give. One evening, as the sun sank into a blood-red sky, the elders called a meeting in the village square. The atmosphere was thick with despair, and an ominous silence settled over the crowd. "There is nothing more we can do," said the oldest elder, his voice shaky with age and worry. "We have prayed, sacrificed, and begged the gods, but they do not answer. We must send someone to the ocean. It is our last hope." The villagers murmured in fear and uncertainty. The ocean lay far beyond the horizon, and its spirits were known to be dangerous. Those who went to the ocean often never returned. But there was no choice now. The village was on the brink of collapse. Ugo stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He could not bear the thought of the children suffering or the elders languishing in their helplessness. "I will go," he declared, his voice steady, even though a wave of anxiety washed over him. The journey to the ocean was long and perilous. Ugo traveled through dense forests, crossed treacherous mountains, and skirted dangerous ravines. Each step felt heavy, the weight of his village's suffering pressing down on him. He thought of their faces, the hollow eyes of children, the strained smiles of mothers, and the frail figures of the elders who had once stood tall. Ugo had to succeed, or they would all perish. Days passed as he traversed the harsh landscape, relying on his strength and determination. He foraged for berries and wild fruits, and when he found a stream, he filled his skin with the precious water, always remembering the desperate pleas of his people. At night, he lay beneath a canopy of stars, haunted by visions of Udi's suffering. The farther he traveled from his village, the more desperate his resolve became. When Ugo finally reached the shore, the ocean stretched before him, endless and dark, a vast expanse that glimmered under the moonlight. He felt a shiver run down his spine as the waves crashed violently against the rocks. He knew that the spirit of the ocean, Agbara, was watching him. Taking a deep breath, Ugo knelt by the shore and called out to the goddess. Agbara, I come to beg for your mercy. My village is dying. We need water. Please help us. At first, there was only silence. The waves continued their relentless rhythm, crashing against the shore. Just as Ugo began to lose hope, the ocean stirred. The waves grew larger, and from the depths a figure rose. It was Agbara, her presence commanding and formidable, her eyes dark and cold as the deepest sea. Her voice was like the wind howling through the night. You dare ask for my help? She said, circling him like a predator. Your people are selfish. They have taken from the land without giving back. They hoard food, water, and wealth while others suffer. And now, when the land can give no more, you come to me? Ugo trembled. He had witnessed the transformation of his village, how greed had poisoned their hearts and clouded their judgment. The villagers had become increasingly self-centered, hoarding food for their families while their neighbors starved. The rich families, once generous, now kept their wealth hidden behind tall walls, indifferent to the cries of the hungry. Their actions had angered the spirits of the land, and this drought was their punishment. But they are desperate, Ugo pleaded, his voice cracking under the weight of his conviction. They are only trying to survive. Agbara laughed, a cruel sound that echoed over the waves, drowning out his pleas. Survival? You mortals always think of yourselves first, but very well. I will help you, Ugo. I will give your village the water it needs. Ugo's heart soared at her words, a flicker of hope igniting within him. Thank you. We will honor you. But, Agbara continued, her smile transforming into something sinister, there is a price. Ugo froze. What price? Agbara's eyes gleamed with malice. You must drink the entire ocean. Ugo stared at her in disbelief. The entire ocean? Yes, Agbara said softly, her voice like silk over stone. If you want to save your village, you must drink it all. It was an impossible task. No man could drink an ocean. Ugo felt a wave of despair wash over him. But as he thought of his village, the children, the mothers, the elders, he steeled himself. If he did not try, they would all die. He had no choice. I will do it, he whispered, determination coursing through him. Agbara's smile widened, and the waves began to calm as if they understood the gravity of the moment. Then begin, she commanded. Ugo bent down and cupped the water in his hands. He drank. The salty liquid stung his throat, but he forced it down. He drank again and again. The water filled his stomach, churning and threatening to make him sick, but he kept going. With each gulp, he could see the ocean begin to recede, the shoreline shifting as the water pulled back. As the ocean's edge withdrew, Ugo glimpsed objects buried beneath the waves, bones, broken ships, treasures, and shadows. Dark shapes twisted in the deep, their glowing eyes fixed on him. He pressed on, drinking more and more, his throat burning, his body protesting, but he could not stop. The ocean was calling to him, and the desperation of his village echoed in his mind. Suddenly, the earth trembled beneath him. A low rumble echoed from the ocean depths, growing louder with every gulp. The dark shapes surged toward the surface, towering above him, their bodies glistening with the water they had absorbed. They were the guardians of the deep, ancient spirits who had been imprisoned beneath the ocean for centuries. And now, Ugo had freed them. You fool, Agbara whispered, her voice dripping with contempt. You thought you could take from the ocean without consequence? The ocean always takes back what is hers. Panic surged through Ugo as he tried to run, but his legs felt heavy and sluggish from the relentless waves. He fell to his knees, gasping for breath as the guardians slithered toward him, their glowing eyes filled with hunger. Please, Ugo begged, tears streaming down his face. I only wanted to save my people. But it was too late. Agbara's laughter echoed through the air, a chilling sound that filled him with dread. There is always a price, she said, and you and your village will pay it. In that moment, the ocean surged forward. Waves crashed around him, swallowing him whole. Ugo fought against the tide, but he was no match for the power of the ocean. Darkness enveloped him, and he felt himself slipping away.